Coming up, what an excellent day for Dyer. Well, howdy folks, and welcome to Minute 40 of the Exorcist Minute, a show where we endeavor to examine, extrapolate, and excavate the Exorcist minute by terrifying minute. My name is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we'll be your holy guides on this journey through what some have called the scariest movie of all time. Okay, so our minute begins with Father Karras punching away at a bag.
And it ends with Burke Denning saying, "Tell me." That's "tell me" if you speak American.
Right, yeah. So it was a very British "tell me." Or that was a very American attempt at a British "tell me." Do you ever know, we Americans, we tend to go either with Cockney is like
right.
the most imitated British accent, or we try to do an RP, right, a received pronunciation, and I was listening to a podcast covering this movie, covering The Exorcist,
mm-hmm.
and they changed Burke's accent to Cockney because that was the only English accent they could do.
Yeah, when you do the Queen and she's like, "Oi, governor."
Yeah.
Welcome to Buckingham Palace, eh?
Oh, the Queen in it. Oh dear. Well, indeed. Okay, so we go from punchy to punch drunk. So Keenan, a while back, I had watched this movie with a friend, and it got to this part where Karras is training in the gym, and my friend turned to me and said, "Why are we watching this guy training in the gym? What does this have to do with anything? How is this relevant?" And, we're going to see more scenes of Karras training. We're going to see him running, doing physical exercise. And I explained to my friend, I said, well, it's because we're showing this guy is physically strong, but weak in his faith. And we already saw that the priest from the beginning is the opposite. He's physically weak, but strong in his faith. And she said, "Oh, I see. Okay." And we continued watching, but it was only for a little bit. And then she turned back again and said, because in a lesser movie, this would be like foreshadowing where he wins by punching the devil in the face. And I said, "Ah."
Well, I'm glad that she and you came to that. I don't like talking during movies. This is one of the reasons why I don't like talking in movies, because you start making decisions about what the movie should be. Like movies are dreams in some ways, right? They work pre-verbally on us. They're doing all sorts of crazy things to us, and then when to put it into words often solidifies us. So we say this is what this movie's about, even if it's not. And then when it doesn't turn out, our predictions don't turn out to be true, where their first impression turned out to be true, then we say it's a problem with the movie. I really hate people who live tweet films, or I really, really, really hate it. But I'm glad you came to that. Yeah, but I really you never see somebody live tweeting and they're like, "Hey, I was wrong about this movie halfway through." It's always like my first impression of this that I'm writing down into a funny joke. That's what I felt the whole way through. And aren't I smart? That's just human nature.
And if the movie should wow me at the end and completely correct my my comprehension of it, well, I don't want to lose face. I don't want to go back on Twitter and be like, "Oh, yeah, I was wrong."
And a lot of The Exorcist it's a very good movie, but it's very much in the narrative mode that we have American genre film, even though it's also really brilliant and really moving. But there's a lot of outside of America, a lot of films are designed specifically that you're not supposed to know what the point of the movie is until the last moment of the movie. So it's why am I watching this, et cetera, et cetera. And then it recontextualizes, the way I like to say it in class. That's what a lot of art films or European style art films are like. They recontextualize. So a lot of the Dardenne brothers movies, they're the most important Belgian filmmakers right now. You just watch and oh, this is fine. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. And then you get to the last line or the last look, which people are like, "Oh my God, that's what this whole thing has been about the entire time. And I didn't realize." And you just sob, It is impossible if you're like, "This is boring. This is a movie about waffles." That's all it is, about waffles. But anyways, I'm glad your friend came today. That's a really I like this dichotomy that you talk about the difference between Father Merrin and Father Karras. I think that's really useful. So But yeah, what would that be like if he does punch the demon in the face?
Right.
And that's how he wins in the end.
Yeah. Well, like I have we'll get to Chekhov's right hook eventually. But for now, let's look at this minute. So this scene of Karras beating the hell out of this punching bag comes immediately after him meeting his mother in Bellevue Hospital. Remember, that failed rescue attempt, that failed harrowing of hell, right? He could not do it, could not save her because of the problem of Demi, right? Mm-hmm. How do you solve a problem like Demi? Well, apparently, you go to the gym and you punch the hell out of a punching bag. And I gotta say, as someone who also works out,
you say that, but I've kept track a little bit because that's a big part of your life, and this is only the second time in our show where you've mentioned that you're like a bodybuilder.
Good. I don't want to be that guy who's literally and figuratively flexing on a non-visual medium.
Right, exactly. Check out these non-visual guns.
Yeah, so, okay,
You've only
good.
brought it up twice, but that's a huge part of your life. I just want people to know, like, you're not just like, so as much as you're going to say like, oh, I work out a little or whatever, like, this is a big part of what you do every week.
Yes. and for very selfish reasons, it's, but like also, it's so therapeutic, right? And that's kind of like how I connected with, with this, this very brief scene where Karras is punching away at this punching bag really, and now I'm trying to think of any word other than hit. It really impacted me. No, it struck me. It made an impression. No,
it punched you in the face.
It punched me in the face. God, so many metaphors are just you getting punched in the face. Is that what life is? Just a series of the universe punching us in the face? Are we just in a boxing match with life? The hell is wrong with people?
Yeah, when they were developing English let me say that. Yeah, like when they were developing language in the Indus Valley way back when, people got punched in the face a lot. Yeah. There were like door jams that were way too short, like a foot too short. People were constantly knocking their faces into the door jams of every house they went into.
Right. That's another word. We need a word for this. That's what I was like. I love you so much. How much do you love me, William Shakespeare? I love you so much. It feels like being punched in the face repeatedly.
Oh, yeah. That's that Shakespeare. Well, we're falling into the Shakespeare Trap again.
No. Good. We got one.
But you've heard this about how Shakespeare has apparently invented like thousands of words of ours?
Oh, have I heard this, Keenan? I am Shakespeare's biggest fan. I don't pretend to know as much about Shakespeare as other folks do, but my kids are so tired of me talking about Shakespeare.
Oh, good.
I have a theater background. I have an English writing background. Like he is my spirit animal. Yeah. Yeah.
But words that we like, he didn't necessarily use them the same way that we use them, right? But like bubble was a Shakespeare invention. Like what did they say before?
I have a whole list up in my classroom, like eyeball.
Eyeball. What did they say before eyeball?
I don't know. Just I guess I don't know. Lonely he invented.
Oh gosh. Oh, the other thing about Shakespeare, before we get out of this Shakespeare Trap, is this crazy idea that Harold Bloom has that is it's one of these untestable theories, right?
Oh.
But the idea of like when you look at Shakespeare's work, he's such a leap forward in characterization, right?
Yes,
and psychology. Yes. And Harold Bloom says it's not that Shakespeare was a genius and he started listing the ways that people are full three-dimensional characters rather than standing in for individual ideas. That wasn't Shakespeare's genius. Shakespeare's genius was that he invented human personality and was so incredibly influential that then we started adopting Shakespearean ideas as human personality.
What?
So it's Harold Bloom's Shakespeare and the Invention of the Human, which is insane. Probably not true, but just a wonderful sort of thought, right?
Wow.
Because we don't have any that's Bloom's idea, right? I'm sure that they're right. So I'm not going to tie my boat to his punching bag or whatever.
The opinions of the Exorcist Minute do not necessarily align with the opinions of Harold Bloom.
Right, exactly. But like that, we just assume that he was a genius in reflecting, but he might have been a genius in inventing.
Wow.
because we don't have other people before him doing the same thing at that same caliber, at least. Again, that's Bloom. I'm sure that there are other people before
Right.
Shakespeare who have a claim to three-dimensional characters, but
Yeah.
I don't know them.
Boy, yeah.
We don't teach them in middle school.
Nope,
So-
nope. Boy, is it life imitating art or is it art imitating life?
Yeah,
Gosh.
he has exactly. Life imitated Shakespeare. So we became like Lady Macbeth. We became like King Lear rather than the other way around.
Oh my God, that is a wild. I don't even know if I want to dip my toe into that at all. It's like that's crazy. That's insane when you really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
God. And not to, okay, I mean, we're practically, it's like worshiping Shakespeare right now. It's like groveling at his feet, but like, not to say that like he didn't have some bad days. One of my favorite things is, okay, yeah. So he invented all these words, right? Like nightmare and lonely and eyeball and all of these others, right? And also like, all of the kind of like the catchy phrases that we do, right? All's well that ends well, and out of thin air, and I'm just, God, I have a whole chart on my wall, but like, yeah, so many things that is like swag is his, right? Huh. Like, yeah, or unfriend.
No.
Yes. No, my favorite is have you heard enwappened?
No, what is
okay,
that?
So that's one of those words. Yeah, he doesn't like to talk about that. Well, he's dead, but yeah, enwappened is a word that he tried to make happen, and it didn't stick.
Oh.
And there's a bunch of those, and I believe, and folks can correct me on this, other like smarter Shakespeare scholars, I believe enwappened like means like you're head over heels in love with someone.
That's a great word.
Yeah, so like Romeo was enwappened with Juliet, and Juliet was enwappened with Romeo, and that was just that was the moment of like, go home, Shakespeare, you're drunk, right? It's like no, we're not doing that. You try as hard as you can to make that happen.
Well,
we're not doing that one.
Maybe in the new Warner Brothers cartoons that they're producing right now, Elmer Fudd can be enwappened with the female, the Bugs Bunny and drag.
The Lady Bugs Bunny.
He's just enwappened by her.
Yeah. Be very, very quiet.
I'm
performing Shakespeare.
Right.
Othello.
The theater doesn't have great acoustics yet. Very quiet.
Be very. I'm speaking to the back. Whoa-meo.
But I had what, it's not a lisp what Elmer Fudd has, but I had that growing up. I don't know what you call that, where you can't pronounce your R's.
Yeah, I should know that. Yeah, it's not a lisp. The Daffy Duck has the lisp.
Right. So my father, parents can do this thing where you just believe what your parents are saying. You don't understand their jokes. So I used to talk like that, until I was like 5 or 6. I went to speech therapy. And so my father said, "Oh yeah, we almost named you Elmer." And he was just ribbing me, with my, just kindly, ribbing me. And I didn't realize that. So I was telling people like, "Oh yeah, originally they wanted to name me Elmer." And they're like, "What? What are you talking about?" My parents like, "What?" Like, "Oh, you told me you wanted to name me Elmer."
See, parents pay attention to what you say around your kids, because they'll remember it even if you don't.
Kids are dumb. That's what I always say.
Yeah, but
you have to tell them when you're joking.
Yeah, but they're also sponges. They're like dumb sponges. Well, Keenan, at least you weren't named Goneril.
And Shakespeare Trap.
And Shakespeare. Let's climb out of this Shakespeare Trap. Oh my God.
Exit Shakespeare Trap pursued
Stage
by a bear.
right. Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Exeunt. Yeah.
So
wait, come back.
Yeah. So I like that we have this little transitionary scene with Karis working out here. No dialogue. It's not like a scene that we would think of like with an arc or anything where he's, but it's a nice little moment we have with him.
Yeah. And again, like it really does speak to me in this way of like, folks, like when COVID was just, at its height, March of like 2020, and they started like closing the gyms down. Like, that's when I realized it's like, oh, like this is therapeutic for me. Like this is where you go when you want to like get out all of your like strong feelings. It's like you go and you lift weights and you do that stuff. And like, I don't know why, I just really, really liked this scene, right? Mm-hmm. Like he just had like a really, really emotionally distressing moment, and now he's he's taking it out on this bag. Like, who is that bag? Is that bag Uncle Titosh? Is that bag the doctor's? Is that bag, it's like, is that bag him? Is that bag God?
Right, God. That's what I was going to say. I didn't know I didn't know how blasphemous that was, right? But yeah, you're taking out your frustrations at whoever it is, and right now it's God.
Yeah, you're not going to like punch your uncle in the face, even though you really want to, right? In the same way that you're not going to punch a little girl that you're mad at, because that would be
lesser film.
A lesser film, as quoted by my friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's the review, right? 4 stars. It's not 1 star, it's 4 stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
That little punch. But yeah, can we also talk about how this scene looks straight out of Rocky?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we made the observation before that Jason Miller looks a little like Rocky, right? He's got an uncle who looks and acts like Paulie. He's not Italian, but like I said, when I was little and not as learned as I am now, I mistook the whole scene with his mother in her home when he was sitting down to eat and she was speaking Greek. I mistook that for Italian,
mm-hmm.
and now he's punching a bag, and this is before Rocky, right? Like, Rocky came out in 1976. And again, folks, like, you can fact check me on this, but I swear I heard somewhere, although I couldn't find it again before this recording, so maybe I just dreamed it, but I swear I heard that some of the training scenes in Rocky were inspired by Karras's training scenes here. Again, that sounds ridiculous as Shakespeare inventing the human personality. But like, these movies are so different, but I don't know.
But this was the highest grossing film of all time. And, it was a big, big hit. So, while John G. Avildsen is making Rocky, directing it, and I'm not sure when Stallone started writing Rocky, but certainly they would have, as they're getting ready to make the movie, they'd be very aware of The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have like that smoking gun of having, it would have been impossible for them to not have seen this movie. I think they'd have to go out of their way to not see it.
Yeah, and I definitely I definitely want to talk about that at some point. Like, we just recently watched the cultural impact. There's like a YouTube documentary. It's about 20 minutes long. It's just called The Exorcist: The Cultural Impact, and it talks about, like, guys, you had to like literally be living under a rock not to experience this thing when it first came out. There were people lining up for hours, for 5-6 hours, just to get into this thing. They had to have they had to make a whole new economy of like tickets. They had to have coupons for tickets so you could get a ticket so you could get in and see this movie. And then people would come in, they would like faint or throw up or run out, and they wouldn't even see the whole thing. And then they would, like, get back in line and try to see it again. It was insane.
The movie was on the news, like the regular non-entertainment news, right?
Right. Like, if there was an internet at that time, you could say that this movie broke it, right? It certainly broke like city blocks and, like, stopped traffic and all this stuff.
I'd love to find more about the specific case. Maybe if I can do some research later, but there was a woman who apparently fainted during a screening of the film and hurt her jaw, and she sued Warner Brothers for that, and they settled for it.
I did hear about that. Yeah. I heard that, like, anecdotally. It was it was mentioned. But I wonder if there is like more detail out there on that.
Right. So, just considering how rare that is now on the news, there might be something about Avatar 2, which is the big movie right now as they're coming out, but it would be, definitely not like features about it. It's like, oh, Avatar 2 is out, and it might be the highest grossing film of all time, but that's it.
Yeah.
It's not like this phenomenon here.
Right. They would stick to like the numbers. It was like, oh yeah, it's selling this much, or, it's doing this well. Yeah. In any case, we work hard and we play hard here at the Exorcist Minute. So let's leave Karras to continue his training, and let's go to a party. Guys, Chris MacNeil is having a party, and we're invited. Time has passed. We see that it's night outside the MacNeil home. Long, sleek, expensive-looking cars are pulling up to the home.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I like this. It's like, because again, we have all that movement from before with Father Karras, and then we have the camera kind of moving in, and these cars, like, it's really dumb. But the choreography of these cars makes perfect sense to us, right? One comes up and parks in front of the house. The other one passes in front of it and then parks in the driveway. If you were to think about, this is one of the things that if you were shooting this, you'd be like, this doesn't make any sense, actually, that they're working that quickly. And they're not like taking turns, but they're both parking at essentially the exact same time within feet of each other. But it just feels right. It feels like, oh, this is the happening place. Like, this is, look, we know we're kind of prepared for the fact that when we cut inside, we're not just going to see Chris and Sharon eating like Chinese takeout.
Right. Oh, I didn't even think about that yet. But yeah, it's like shorthand for, like what we're going to see in just a second.
Yeah,
Wow.
party over here. That's what Cleveland on the Family Guy says. That's what a balloon on a mailbox means. It means party over here.
There we go. Oh my God. But yeah, so, and then we cut to inside and we're treated to a throng of partygoers. Learn that word from The Hobbit. Perfectly describes this large group of people. And I also got to say, seeing this scene pre-COVID, I'm sure I had a different feel about it than I do now, living in a world where we are still dealing with COVID. Folks listening in the future, it's 2023, and we still have this problem. It was an observation that was going around at the height of COVID that seeing a scene like this in old movies with like large groups of people all like tightly packed into a room, it sort of feels weird watching them. And I hope that will go away eventually. And yeah, even though it's much better now than it was when COVID was like a huge problem, my mind still went there without me wanting to. I was like, oh, that's a lot of people.
That might be like a generational wound for us that we have to, like, it might not go away the same way. But man, during the height of it, oh yeah, I would watch like a movie from the 40s and be like, oh, they don't have their mask on. Right? Like it's in black and white. Oh my God, they can't do that. Or I saw Disney Pixar's Soul, which is in New York City, and it was like their first big movie during COVID, and like, oh my God, and the people just walking across each other, right? And part of it is like kind of like this angel character who like goes to Earth, and they like put their hands on everything, and they like pizza, and they're like running their hands along like subway grates and stuff like that. Like, oh no, don't do it. You don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, so if you're listening in the future, COVID was a really, really big deal for us. We don't really understand the way that it's changed our society. Or, because humanity has been wiped out by COVID Part 5.
Right.
And, and this is the last record you have of us. So
we call that Gorilla COVID.
So, hey.
Yeah, that's the one with like spinning death blades.
And they're like, so they were in COVID Part 4. Right. And they were in the COVID lockdown Part 4, and they sat around recording thoughts about some horror movie from the 70s. That's how they spent their last days.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. That's exactly right. Right. And then somehow the COVID virus was transferred into computers. And then watching TikTok would give you COVID. And so that was a whole thing, folks. So I hope you're listening to this with a mask on.
Humanity has evolved past the need for orifices at this point, whoever's still listening to this. Right. They're just impermeable plastic shells.
Wow. Yep. To match their personalities. No. Oh, no.
No, we love you in the future.
Yes.
In 3023, we love you.
3023. Wow. Yeah. That's how many Exorcist remakes have gone by, folks. I can't believe we didn't even talk about this. Yes, because people have been asking on the listener group and through email. Yes, we are absolutely going to talk about the Exorcist. What is it? Reboot, sequel? What the heck is it?
A requel?
A requel. Oh, Jesus! Did you just
no? My Hollywood friend. That's what people.
Mr.
In Hollywood
Shakespeare over here.
Yeah, reboot sequels like Ghostbusters Afterlife is a requel.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, we will definitely talk about it.
But we're not looking forward to it, right? Like,
I'm looking forward to seeing an Exorcist movie in the theater. That's my big thing. I already have, my guard up. I love this book so much, and I love this movie. I don't think, and this is me not having seen it, so future Lester might come on here and apologize or whatever, but I have a feeling culture was a certain way when this movie came out, and this movie spoke to that culture, right? Everybody, there was a lot more Catholic stuff going on in the 1970s, and so this movie hit really hard. How do you hit really hard now? Like, we would have to know what affects us deeply, right? Stuff about, like, I talk about like being, spiritual still, but like stuff about God doesn't have the same impact as it did when this first came out, right?
I think it's completely fair. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, what is the scare? What is the big threat? What is the big, thing? I feel like it would just be, I feel like the movie would constantly be like, hey, remember back when this movie first came out and it was scary? Hey, remember that? Remember that? I want you to remember that while you're watching this movie. Like, yeah, like how do you you would have to figure out what scares us as a culture now.
Yeah, there's a handful of movies that have tried that with climate change, right? Which is sort of the sort of Damocles over all of our heads. And some have worked and some have not. So the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, because the first remake is explicitly about nuclear war, and the aliens come down and they're like, do you want to be better and get rid of all your nuclear weapons, or should we destroy you before you bring nuclear weapons into the universe? So that's explicitly about that. So the remake of that just doesn't work as well. It's the aliens come down and they're like, you need to be better about climate change or we will destroy humanity so that you don't kill all the other species. And, maybe that could work, but it just doesn't, the movie just doesn't work, right? So we don't, not quite sure of like, oh, is it the theme that's the problem? There's a smaller movie, an art movie by Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver. And he essentially remade Ingmar Bergman's Winter Light into a movie called First Reformed. And the first in Winter Light, we have Max von Sydow, who is a character who goes to his priest, and he is really disturbed by the idea of nuclear war, and he's like, why should I have a family? Why should I go to work? Why should I do anything if the world's going to be destroyed and there's no God? If there's going to be a nuclear war, and here in Sweden, even though we're neutral, we're still going to be wiped out.
Yeah.
Right. And so then the remake of that is with Ethan Hawke talking to a man, and the man is having the same conversation about climate change. What's the point of, my wife is pregnant, but who cares? Why should I go to work? Why should I be bringing this child into the world? Why should I do anything if climate change is there?
Yeah. And I mean, like, this movie, this book, this story certainly talks about stuff that still does affect us today, right? It's like life and death and good and evil and existential dread and all of that stuff. So I'm hopeful that, they have some stuff to work with, but like, I don't know, like it's without the religious aspect, a demon kind of it's like a mean ghost.
It's a real sassy, bitchy ghost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause like, this, I'm sure a lot of our listeners know this. People are less religious in America. We're still the most religious of all the industrialized countries in the world. Like we go to church more, we identify as religious more, but that's been declining. And then even the people who still identify as religious, they in general have become more, what's the word? There is a word for it, but people who are like sympathetic to other people's beliefs, right? About like, like this is what I believe, but I don't believe it's the only truth. There's a word. There's a much better word for that. Right.
Like, I mean, like back in the day, like, if you were of another religion, even of like another like Christian religion, like you were thought of as like a heathen. You were thought it was like, well, you're definitely going to hell, like for not being like an Anglican or a Protestant or a Catholic or something like that. You're, it's like, even though you worship Jesus, you're still going to go to hell.
There's still people like that around, obviously. I was really struck in the 2012 campaign. There was a video of Mitt Romney in an Iowa cafe, and he goes to shake a man's hand, and the man, old man, much older than Romney, like has his arms crossed, and he's like, nope. And I'm like, oh, this guy is like a Democrat or something, but he says, I would never shake the hand of a Mormon. And I went, oh, like in public on TV, like this is what you've done. Like that's awful, right? That just shocks the hell out of me. But there are still people like that. But yeah, in general, people are more. I was going to try to think of the word again. Right,
it's like universal,
or ecumenical, like, something.
Oh my God, it's on the tip of my tongue too. It's not tolerant, but like
that's not exactly what we're saying. But yeah, but the idea that like, okay, I have my beliefs and you have your beliefs, and we could both work together.
It's like live and let live, and
so that was different in the 1970s. Like, to be Catholic, right? We forget that because Catholic is such a huge chunk of the Christian population, but they were heavily discriminated against in the 1970s. Yes. JFK barely won election in 1960, and some untold number of the popular vote was against him because he was Catholic. Where that's not a problem for Biden. I don't know if they even poll that anymore. Our second Catholic president, I don't think that was even polled. Like, are you not going to vote for Biden because he's Catholic?
Because he's Catholic, right? Yeah.
But that number did show up a very small amount for Romney. Like you would not vote for him because he's LDS, Latter-day Saint.
Right. Very, like this is it. Like I'm excited. I'm definitely going to see it.
Mhm.
I'm going to see it so that I can have an Exorcist experience. And and I'm hopeful, right? Hey, what is it? Conviction, communion, hope, right? I have all of that, right? I don't want any doubt, isolation, or despair, but yeah.
But again, like, these movies are made during a certain culture, like from a certain culture, from a certain people, or at least they're you could either see them as artifacts of the people making them,
Mm-hmm.
or artifacts of the people watching them, right? Like, I'm
Yes.
making a movie for a perceived audience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oftentimes those are the same things, but sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
So, and then here today, right, it's not the perceived audience. It's like literally us, you and me, watching this movie. And now we're thinking of COVID. We're thinking
Right.
of masks. We're thinking about how irresponsible, Chris MacNeil, to have a party like this. And next week, what, you're going to go to the White House and bring whatever terrible germs these ugly people have on their faces.
You're going to get the president sick.
You're going to get Richard Nixon sick. How could you?
We don't even know what he's done yet.
That's right.
Oh my God. And yes, just to wrap that up, folks, we will see it and we are going to talk about it on this show. Like, we are definitely going to talk about it. We're not going to do that movie minute by minute. I think we'll have an episode where we talk about our impression of the movie.
Sounds
for
good.
sure. Absolutely. But yeah, so back to this party. Now, this party is apparently so large and so prestigious that it needs a guest book. Did you catch that in the first shot? Like, we got this older couple and they're signing this guest book in the lower right. They're at like a table with some candles.
No,
right?
I didn't see that. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
so
I don't know what else that would be.
No, that's a guest book, right? They're not putting their order. They're not like 16 McNuggets for me.
Right, Sharon, Carl, get this, out for us, Willie. Yeah, and again, right, with these candles and all these people packed, I cannot imagine how stuffy, like with the candles and the people in the suits and everything like that. Like, every time I see, those Christmas movies where like it's a happy ending, where like everybody in the freaking movie is all like together in one room and they're having Christmas dinner, but they're all like dressed in like Victorian Dickensian, like, with a scarf and the hat, and you got a roaring fire and you got candles on the Christmas tree for some freaking reason. And you also got candles at the table. I was like, oh my God, like I would be suffocating in that scene, right? Like I would need some fresh air. It's like, can we please open a window? Like, I'm going to die, COVID or not. Okay. But yeah, so and we also have Willie here answering the door, and Carl is there. This party is in full swing already, right? Mm-hmm. And we're only in the foyer, foyer. Yeah. And once again, our camera does this really cool thing that we've seen before, where it moves, and we see that the banister is between us and the party, right? The first time I watched this, right, like I thought it's like, oh wait, you were going to say something?
Oh no, I love that. That's a recurring thing in this movie, and it just works so well.
It's like moving like behind stuff, and we see like we get a better sense
stuff
of like
that
where
we didn't
are.
Even know was there.
Yeah, right. And the first time I watched this, I thought, oh, this is like Reagan's POV. She's upstairs watching her mom play hostess, right? She's watching mom being not mom, but being like a big time actress, Chris MacNeil. And I'm not even saying I saw this when I watched the film as a casual viewer. I'm saying right now, before this recording, taking notes, I was like, oh yeah, this is Reagan's POV, right? She witnesses the other side of her mother. But Keenan, Reagan is right there.
Where?
she's right next to her mom. It's hard to catch. We see her for maybe a second.
She's tiny. She's a little girl.
Like her mom's wearing bright blue, and she's wearing bright pink. Right.
And everyone else is in those stated like Georgetown colors, right?
Right.
So they just stand out like that. Yeah.
Right. It's very hard to catch. Right. We see her for maybe a second, and then the POV sinks behind the banister, and she's gone. So Keenan, if Reagan is there, who's on the stairs looking down at all this?
No, he got out.
He creepily hiding behind the banister and observing. Right. I thought he was in the basement or the attic. Right. He's here now too. Like, how much of the house is he infected?
He's everywhere.
That's
interesting. Yeah, because because it's like me knowing the movie too well. I'm very aware that Reagan is upstairs and she's being tucked into bed. Right.
Yeah.
But no, that's not what's happening. Yeah, because I know the next scene is Reagan in bed.
Right. Yes. Right. But right now she's down there. She's down there with mom.
So she gets to enjoy the party.
A little bit, yeah.
So what's Reagan so mad about? Because it's right. Because like, okay, so I guess we're going into next minutes, right?
Right.
But like the way I popularly remember the movie is that Reagan is upstairs and her mom tucks her in, and she isn't happy that she doesn't get to be a grown up. And then later at the after party, which is several minutes ahead,
right?
The after party, she comes and does something pretty naughty.
Right? Yeah.
So Reagan, Rags, what are you so mad about? You got to come to the party.
I think it's less Reagan and more her good old friend.
Oh no, being naughty.
Yep. Oh,
Captain Naughty Pants.
Captain Naughty Pants. This is we got to pin this all on you, Captain Howdy. Like, oh boy. But yeah, like to sort of further drive home that point, right? The brief shot that we get of Reagan in the beginning, she looks like normal Reagan, right? Like,
yes.
If you watch, like it's just a couple of milliseconds, right? But she's greeting the guests with her mom, right? She looks happier than we have seen her in a long time.
Absolutely. She's talking to grown-ups. Yeah, she's helping. She's assisting. She's in a nice little dress.
Right. So I'm talking I'm taking that to mean that Captain Howdy is at least for the time elsewhere. And so I see Happy Reagan and I'm like, wait, then whose POV is this?
Where's Captain Howdy?
Right. And then that's the exact moment when the POV shifts and the banister floats up between us and it's like, oh my God, who are we with? Who is hiding on the stairs watching all of this?
You are absolutely correct. That's the only way to read this from now on. No more interpretation, people at home. Yeah, there's the lesser way of reading. No, but you're absolutely right. That's great. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. We say, folks, that there is no right way or wrong way to view art or consume art, but no, this is objectively the right way. The only way.
No, that changes the way I see this scene for sure.
Yeah, that's Captain Howdy on the stairs.
Reagan had a lovely time at the party, and someone tells her that she didn't.
Yes, and this is a person she's built up a trust with, right? She's gonna say, hey, remember when your mom introduced you to like that astronaut and that priest as Rags, right?
Right.
I remember that. Pepperidge Farm remembers that.
Right. Pepperidge Farm remembers. This is my stinkpot daughter.
My barefaced daughter.
You said that she sounds like Elmer Fudd. He told all your friends.
Your mom tucked you in so that they could all laugh at you downstairs. That's what it is. That's what's going on.
Jeez, this is scary.
And Reagan, I particularly don't like that astronaut. Let's go back down there.
Right.
I have a great idea. This is what we're going to say to him.
Get your naughty pants on, Reagan.
Yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, okay, so we cut away to a larger room and a larger group of well-heeled ladies and gents in little pockets of conversation. And then also some close shots of people talking animatedly. And I always wonder with these big parties like in film, I imagine it's all improvised or maybe you might have like little beats, little rehearsed pieces of dialogue, but nothing scripted. Like Friedkin or Blatty wouldn't bother to be like, okay, I want you to say exactly this, unless he knew it was going to get picked up by the camera, by the mic. But I always wondered, like directors and editors and podcasters who like watch things really closely, like we're going to catch some of that improvised dialogue, especially if it's from a film that you watch over and over again, right? You're going to be able to pick out some background images, some background sounds, stuff that you're not supposed to notice. Like I use Final Cut Pro, like when I'm making like my little short films, and there's a file in there, a walla file. And folks, like a walla is a sound effect of like large crowds speaking or murmuring or shouting.
Yeah, let's do a little bit for them, Lester. Like
okay, so we do a walla. Oh, peas and carrots. Shakespeare invented personality.
Right, and some of it's just recorded and kept forever. So some of them just become a lot of sound designers have files they like a lot, and they keep them around.
Yeah, but yeah, like the famous Wilhelm scream is is right in there, right? And
have we talked about that before?
I don't think we've talked about the Wilhelm scream, and I can't imitate it.
Oh, I was going to ask you to.
Yeah. But it's like all you got to do is just Google Wilhelm scream and listen to like a little sound bite of it and you'll know exactly
it's a sound effect from the 50s that was very useful. It's never meant to be like foregrounded. Like it's always like background people, like some guy getting shot off of a horse and he goes, ah! I did it terrible.
Right,
Terrible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, see, that's why I didn't do it.
Great. Well, now you have me on tape doing it. Yeah, there's a better one doing it. And so then a lot of sound engineers just used it, and sound designers used it over and over again. And then by the time that sound design became a really big deal, and people were like going into that as like film fans and film artists, that Wilhelm scream became something that they use almost as an in-joke for themselves, right? And now it's become that. So it's very prominently in Indiana Jones 2. We have a guy who falls off and gets eaten by crocodiles, and we use that. Like, that's impossible to avoid hearing it.
Right.
Whereas before it was like, oh, that's a background character. This is a really small moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear it a lot in like Mel Brooks films and stuff like that. Right. And yeah, like that's almost kind of like to the detriment of like the folks who used it first in like a non-funny way. Right. And you just hear this Wilhelm scream and you're like, oh, okay.
I just heard one of those actually in, I can't remember which movie that we just saw. Black Panther Wakanda Forever, perhaps.
Oh.
There's a police radio dispatch that I don't know the name of, but I've heard it enough. And it's a woman. She's a dispatcher. She goes 76-9 Fifth Avenue, and it's like the exact same thing. And like I heard it in Black, I was like, wait a minute, like at that point, I'm sure that the sound designer knows that that's like a stock thing, like on a Marvel picture.
Oh, you mean like somebody speaking over the radio, like a walla for somebody speaking over the radio.
Like that must be, if I can recognize it. I'm not a sound person, but I've heard it enough. I'm sure that the sound designer's there, on a $250 million production like Black Panther 2. They know that that's like, that they could have gone and recorded that themselves and got a whole new file. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, like we got like with the advent of video games as well, like every time a door closes and it sounds like the door from Resident Evil, I hear it because in games, you go through doors a lot.
Well, that's where I first heard this dispatch noise. Yeah, it was in a video game.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because you hear it over and over and over again.
Exactly, right? So like, I'm wondering if that's like we as filmmakers, we as artists are going to kind of like, get more careful with that. It's like, oh, like any sound that goes into a video game and people are playing it and dying and playing it again, like that sound is going to be really, really recognizable. So we can't even have that in the background of a big movie. Like,
right. So the way that this works with like this Exorcist scene, so I don't know specifically about the details of these extras, these background actors.
Right.
But you as an extra, it's rare for you to be allowed to actually speak as an extra. And oftentimes you are just, saying the words peas and carrots or something like that, like you're talking about, like you're mouthing it. To the point actually where I saw that they were auctioning off once for like the Academy or some kind of charity, a background acting role in a Woody Allen movie.
Oh.
And Jennifer Tilly, who had been in a Woody Allen movie, she was nominated for Bullets Over Broadway. She was like, Woody lets you, let me do my Jennifer Tilly, right? What's great about being in a Woody movie is that he lets you say whatever you want. So that is, so that was the appeal there. He lets the actors actually talk. Right. Oh. So that's rare enough for people to comment on it. So here, unless it was Friedkin or Blatty or a combination of the two of them on the day saying like, hey, extra, we're going to give you a line. They were not, given lines.
Interesting.
And sometimes you would get, you'll see this in the credits sometimes, like you'll get crowd voices. So you'll have people come in like voice actors like Lester.
Right.
Hire Lester as a voice actor to do crowd noises.
Please do. Yes.
Yeah. To do crowd noises where they'll come in and do this. So I'm sure every once in a while it's something where you're trying to match, for an actor who wasn't actually recorded. I'm sure that must happen.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Like ADR. Oh, yeah. Speaking of ADR, guys, right? That happened in this minute. Right. If you go back to Damien and his uncle talking, right, that is most definitely not the sound of their voices recorded on the day. Right. You can hear, it's slightly, you can hear the mic as ridiculous as that sounds. You can hear the microphone. Both of those guys are speaking in front of a microphone, and they kind of like they're overdubbing the scene that's going on. Probably because they were filming outside, and probably like the background noise was way too loud for their actual.
Yeah, you're shooting really in New York City. That's almost impossible to really do. Yeah. So that's automatic dialogue replacement is what ADR stands for. So that means that people, this is one of the really interesting, difficult things about film acting that's different from theater acting, is that one of the things you have to do as a film actor that you have to train yourself for, and I think it's very hard and you probably find it fun, is to go in and look at a performance that you did months ago. like 3 or 4 months ago. And because of the nature of film, like you're not, as in theater, you're generally trying to get the perfect take or what you think is the perfect take, right?
Yes.
You're generally trying to do that. Obviously, that's not always the case. Theater actors don't write me, but like there's an idea that you have and you're trying to do it that you worked on rehearsal. In film, you're basically rehearsing 3 or 4 times on camera and then recording it. You don't know which one is the right one.
Right.
So you might have even thought like, oh, the one that I thought was the best one is not what's in the movie. The director and the editor have worked together. They've already decided that. So like you're watching yourself from 4, 5, 6 months ago on a Marvel film 2 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I don't even remember giving this performance because this isn't the one I liked. And then you have to perfectly match your own lip movements from, you know, months and months ago.
Right.
And give the exact same performance, which is like very difficult because the other actor isn't there. It's just you and the director and the sound engineers. The other actor isn't there with you. You're not in the same costume. You've gained 30 pounds, you know, all this stuff, right? Yeah. It's really, really, really hard. And that's something that's just inherently different, not better or worse, but different for film acting than theater acting.
Right. And as much as like, you know, Sir Michael Caine says that the camera picks up every little nuance, right? The camera picks up like in your eyes, like what you're thinking about almost, right? Like every little twitch, every little micro expression that you do, right? Every little, in the same way that the camera is like even more observant than the human eye, the microphone picks up everything, like absolutely everything, like where you stumble on a word, where you hesitate, where your inflection goes up and down. It can, like I said, like go back and listen to Karras and his uncle. You can tell, even though you can't maybe tell why, but you can tell that that's not their actual voices outside. You can tell that it's been ADR'd.
Right.
And it's just like the microphone picks up everything. And that's again, one of the big differences between theater acting and film acting is like, you know, an audience member, like it happens fast and you can't rewind and you can't pause. And the audience member is like way in the back, or like, even if they're like right up, you know, on the stage, they're going to miss some things that a close up and a microphone are going to catch. Right.
The theater performance is not designed for a close up anyways.
Right. Yes. Right. Yes. So, and like, you know, back to, you know, talking about like stock, you know, wallas and, you know, like background, noise files and stuff like that. Right. Like, of course, Friedkin's not doing this, right? He didn't have Final Cut Pro. And even if he did, right. Like Keenan said, like, he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who would, you know, cut corners and, you know, do a pre-made sound file. Right. So all this stuff here, would you say, well, no, you said like that they're not actually talking. So
it'd be very unusual if that was the case. Yeah, it'd be very, very unusual. And then there's a guy named Robert Altman who specialized in party type movies. He did MASH, and Nashville is sort of his masterpiece. And there's 24 main characters in Nashville. And they're in parties like this. And he had to actually invent right before Nashville. So like 70, so somewhere between when The Exorcist was shot in Nashville in 1975, he had to invent new recordings so that we could record multiple people talking at the same time. So
interesting.
So again, I don't know for The Exorcist, they might have tried to reproduce that or done some early version of that, but it would have been incredibly difficult to have two sides of a conversation for these extras and just let them sort of go crazy and then, you know, not impossible, but unlikely.
Yeah. Now there is one like little snippet of conversation that I did catch. So we got like we cut away, and we got these two older ladies. And the one sitting is like I told you, but then her grandfather, and then we cut away, and I'm like, her grandfather what? Like, what about her grandfather? Like I want to hear the rest of that story. Is it a story? Is it a real event that this actor is using because like she doesn't think anybody is going to catch it? Well, guess what, lady, we caught it. So now cough it up. Like, what's the deal with her grandfather? We got to know.
Yeah, it's lost to history.
Yeah, it's lost to like, and we'll never know. It's like is this like is this two extras like talking about like some real life thing, or did there's like, hey, let's have like a whole little backstory about grandfathers?
Yeah, and in the script, at least the script that we have, which is from December of 1972, none of this dialogue is in there. So again, we go, it's all sort of all over the place in terms of the order. We go from the Klein scenes, the Dr. Klein scenes from earlier, directly to this party. So you don't have any of the Father Karras stuff or any of the Mary Karras. And then none of this dialogue that we've seen so far is in the script. So there's whole pages that are in the original script that aren't in the film of sort of this party dialogue, but nothing about the father, nothing about the grandfather, rather.
Right.
So Blatty might have written it for those ladies, but it's just not in the original draft of it.
Yeah. So I like how we start out with a group of people and we sort of like follow them, and it looks like we're gonna like be with them, as they go, but then they join the flow that's going to the left, and so these people sort of act like curtains opening up on the scene with Burke and the astronaut, right?
Like a little wipe, yeah.
Yeah, right. And I really like that, like using like your actors as kind of like a transition. Like that's really cool.
Yeah, that's really neat stuff.
Yeah, I'm always a sucker for that stuff. And also, I gotta say that I'm very disappointed that our astronaut is not dressed like an astronaut. That's always how it's been in my head. That's my headcanon. Right?
Yeah, you said that on the show, and you totally convinced me that he was just as an astronaut. So when he shows up here and he's dressed interestingly, like he has an interesting looking coat, so he stands out as a real character, but not as interesting as it could have been. Exorcist people.
It's like, Chris, what are you doing? You gotta like sprinkle your party with like some astronauts and some firemen, and you were just with a bunch of doctors, right? Like get some Halloween costumes in there. Right. Come on.
Yeah. So that what could have been, you've showed me. If they were only brave enough.
One innovation at a time, Keenan. Right?
Yeah.
Like we had Shakespeare inventing personalities, and we can't have Friedkin, shooting off guns and having astronauts at parties, right? Yeah, that's my headcanon. Certainly after Reagan says the thing to him, I think he's going to wear it all the time just to be safe.
Right, his life support system strapped to his back.
Yeah, just in case. Okay, so we got classic Burke here. This line is directly from the book. Here he's like talking to, in the book, he's talking to the senator.
Right. And
Chris only finds out about it after the senator leaves the party in a huff, right? So the book says, like, in a guarded tone, Sharon described an encounter between the senator and the director. Dennings had remarked to him in passing, said Sharon, that there appeared to be an alien pubic hair floating around in my gin. Then he'd turned to the senator and added in a tone that was vaguely accusatory, "Never seen it before in my life. Have you?" Chris giggled as Sharon went on to describe how the senator's embarrassed reaction had triggered one of Denning's chaotic rages, in which he'd expressed his boundless gratitude for the existence of politicians, since without them one couldn't distinguish who the statesmen were, you see. When the senator had moved away in a huff, the director turned to Sharon and said proudly, "There, you see, I didn't curse. Now then, don't you think I handled that rather demurely?"
Yeah, in the script, it's also the senator and not the astronaut.
Interesting. And so, like, I like that they kept this in, right? But I like how, like, later on, I believe in the next minute, we get kind of the punchline in a different form, where he's like, "Now what's for dessert?" Right? Like he's just caused like a whole bunch of trouble, and then he turns to somebody and is like, "Okay, where were we?" Right?
Oh, well, that's also different in the script. So he starts with in the script version that we have, he bothers Carl and does all of that stuff, and then later on he's just sitting with the senator. Like they've allowed him just to go back into the party, and says that to the senator.
Oh, okay. So the pubic hair thing happens after Carl.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
That's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing. So I mean, like, I guess everybody is just familiar with like Burke's persona, right? Like he is this brilliant director, and he can be like a very kind, like gentle person. Like he did that whole thing for Reagan in the book, right? But like when he's drunk, he just he's classic Burke.
Yeah. So in the script, he says the first part to Carl about, "Oh, yeah, I know who you are," and then he does this with the senator, and then later on he goes and picks on him really worse. So like they've had this opportunity to stop him, it seems, and they don't.
Yeah. And I want to talk more about that in our next minute, because we get a little bit of Carl's character too, and it's slightly different from the book. Their reactions to each other in the book are a little bit different. We'll definitely talk about that in the next minute.
But it's interesting how much moving really tiny scenes around changes the tenor and the trajectory of these things.
Yes, right. Like there's a buildup, or there's an escalation, or there's a de-escalation that it kind of like changes the whole tone, right?
Like we might think this is funny what Burke is saying about the pubic hair, but it's harder to say that after he starts attacking poor Carl and calling him a Nazi.
Yeah. Oh, poor Carl. I just want all the best for Carl. Carl's like leave him alone, Burke. All right. As much as I like you, like you guys got to play nice. Come on. But yeah, so yeah, for whatever reason, right? They decided to, change the whole pubic hair thing to like him messing around with the astronaut instead.
And it's an alien pubic hair still.
Right.
Okay. So like that,
Interesting.
right. So maybe if you know the book, you're like, oh, that's just a synonym for or for
like foreign,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here, I mean, it feels more like it's. Have you seen an alien pubic hair before?
Right, like a joke. Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God, Keenan, this astronaut is not having a good time at this party. Everybody's picking on him. No wonder he wants to leave Earth.
Right.
Sheesh. And Keenan, am I wrong? It's also a little weird that the next little vignette features him as well. Like now we got Father Dyer talking to the astronaut, and it just like struck me this time around like, wait, didn't we just have a moment with him? And I thought what we were doing was like dipping into individual conversations. Like we were like at the party and we were like looking at this in real time. But clearly time has jumped because the astronaut got up and moved away from Burke. And now he's talking with Father Dyer, and they've been talking like this is like the middle of a new conversation.
Right.
And I'm not saying I don't like it, but it did make me think at first that those were two different people, as if the guy chatting with Burke like was the senator, like and talking with him, and like maybe he's like still talking to him whilst like this thing with the astronaut and the priest is going on. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's got when you look, I feel the same way. I was like, is this the same person? He's got a pretty distinctive costume. Right. So it's not just black or navy suit like everybody else. His is sort of this weird, almost green purple. Like it's not as it's not like the Joker or something like that.
Right.
But it's like this plaid suit or checkered suit. So he does stand out. So we can definitely tell this is the same person. But yeah, on a first blush, I would assume those are two different people. Yeah. We're spending a lot of time setting up this astronaut.
Yeah, we are.
Because he does get the bigger moment in the big scene of the party later on with Reagan, as opposed to the senator who isn't as, what she does to him isn't as shocking as what she does to the astronaut.
Yeah. Okay, so guys, this is our introduction to a couple new characters. We got our astronaut here, played by Dick Callanan. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about him in our next minute, because he does play like an important part in, I guess, like the larger Blatty universe.
Blatty universe.
The Blatty-verse. There we go. I'm coining that right now. But yeah, so we'll talk about him a little bit later. But also, folks, we got Father William J. O'Malley here playing Father Dyer. We're going to learn more about Father Dyer also in a bit, right? More about the character. But this actor, once again, folks, this is a real Jesuit priest. So that's how many so far in this film? We got 5 priests. We got Father Marin, Father Karras, Father Birmingham, Tom, Father Nicola, who witnesses the desecration, and now Father O'Malley. And of those 5, 3 of them are actual priests, right? Who are not only like acting in the movie, but also what did we call them? Technical advisors,
right?
Right. So yeah, so this is our third real life priest here, Father William J. O'Malley. Now, Father O'Malley, he taught English and theology at McQuaid Jesuit High School. He's written 37 books and also directed a number of musical and drama productions. I believe my research said that he directed a total of 99 plays, many of which were at his high school. I think it was like sort of a tradition during his time there as the teacher. Like every year he would direct the big musical production, and he was like known for that.
That's the big time, the musical at the end of the year.
Oh yeah. And you can sort of tell, right, compared to our other authentic priests, O'Malley has some chops, right? Especially when he's at the piano in a later minute, right? He's got an audience, and you're like, this guy performs in some capacity, right?
Yeah, he certainly has. I mean, he's the one of the 3 priests so far who are real who has the most of an actual like character, and he has an arc. I mean, like he doesn't have to sort of be. I don't want to diminish what the other 2 are doing because I'm really a big fan of those, but like he has to really go places with his character.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And I believe after The Exorcist, he went back to teaching, and he would refer to this film as that pornographic horror film I once did. Yeah. Which I like. Are we talking about like? Did pornographic have a different, like in the same way that you like enlighten me on like X-rated meant something different when it was first coined? Like did did pornographic just mean like obscene?
No, I think he means it. Yeah, I think he means it as the joke, the full joke that this is a dirty movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is what it is.
Yeah,
okay.
I believe so.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, like I said, it looks like he's also a writer. He's written some books on faith. And then, yeah, he later on taught an elective called God, Morality, Marriage, Fatherhood, like all themes that show up in this movie.
That sounds like a great class.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to link in my show notes an article that he wrote, which he tells the story of how he and Blatty actually met. It's from America: the Jesuit Review, and it's titled "The Lunch Between a Jesuit and William Peter Blatty That Led to a Role in The Exorcist." Right? It was published January 2017, right after Blatty had passed away, and basically it follows how O'Malley was asked by a local library to review this new book called The Exorcist. So he reads it. It deeply affects him, and he writes his review, and then he sends it to Blatty, whom he did not know yet. And Blatty immediately responds, saying his book was basically like a thank you note to his Jesuit education. However, Blatty had just two little tiny things that he found faulty in O'Malley's review. The first tiny little thing was that he missed the whole point of the book. The point, according to Blatty, is perfectly summed up in that added scene when the two priests are on the stairs. That scene, we will get to that scene, folks, and I can't wait. I have so many things to say about that scene. Just a bit of a spoiler. I am 100% Team Blatty on that scene. He hates when people call this a horror story. He even wrote an article, which we'll definitely read on this show down the road, where he lays out his argument for The Exorcist, at least his version in the book, being a story of hope, of redemption, of triumph, of good over evil. For Blatty, there's like no ambiguity. The power of love and goodness wins out. And we're jumping ahead, but I can't not talk about it here. That angle of the story is why I wanted to do this show, because I feel like that's like not an angle that the casual viewer or maybe even the casual reader sees or remembers about this story. Certainly O'Malley didn't even get that feeling when he first read the book.
Just like shock, just like, oh my God.
Yeah, right.
What have I read? What have I seen?
Exactly. And again, like to bring it back to the time, right? Like we think of the pea soup, we think of the head spinning, we think of the, the crucifix scene and all of that. It's like that goes part and parcel with The Exorcist. Oh yeah, The Exorcist, the movie where like, that pornographic horror movie, right? But like try to put yourself in like 1970s, like you're reading this for the first time or you're seeing this on the screen for the first time. The other problem that Blatty had, apparently in O'Malley's review, he says that the priests, the characters in the book, were a little too wisecracky, a little too sarcastic. I believe he was referring specifically to the character of Father Dyer. And his exact words were cutesy flip. So Blatty insisted that that's how all of his Jesuit teachers actually were. And then in this same letter, Blatty invites O'Malley to have dinner with him. They meet and they sort of hit it off. And then 2 weeks later, O'Malley gets a call from Blatty and he's like, hey, how'd you like to play Father Cutesy Flip? So like O'Malley, how'd you like to play Father Dyer, that character that you were, criticizing? And so here we go again, folks, like another miracle, another story about a seemingly random happenstance, a chance meeting resulting in this guy being in one of the most famous movies of all time. Friedkin had a word like for these, I later found out, right? He refers to them as offerings.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
like
word.
The universe like offering up, Yeah.
Yeah, Father Dyer is rather funny. I mean, Damien doesn't get to tell jokes, so someone has to.
Yeah. So yeah. Father Dyer is his kind of like foil, his comic relief, right? And we're going to see again, like those themes of communion, right? Like very, very soon, Father Karras is going to need a Father Dyer, like to crack jokes with him and to like, just like sit with him and be with him. And yeah, Father Dyer does a really good job of that.
It's interesting that we meet him the way that we do at this party, separate from Father Karras, and then we're going to unite those two threads through him.
Yeah.
So two of our main characters are going to be introduced, connected through Dyer.
Through Dyer, yeah, right. That's his job. He's just making friends, matchmaking, and But yeah, he even features in Blatty's like I guess sequel book to this. In Legion, which I guess eventually we're gonna talk about. That's him and Kinderman. But so we got Father Dyer, and we're going to see more of him later. But for now, in our minute, he's talking to this astronaut, and they're talking about the Mercury and the Gemini programs. And I had to look this up, right? This info is from the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. So apparently these were part of a series of missions that like built and improved on each other. There was like this one-man Mercury mission, or like a collection of them that developed hardware for like safe space flight and return to Earth, and showed how human beings did in space. And that was like from 1961 through 1963. No. From 61 to 63, the United States flew a bunch of test flights and six manned Mercury missions. And now I'm wondering, like 6 manned Mercury missions, so that's like
6 individual Mercury missions with one man in them, right?
Okay. You knew exactly what I was confused about.
Yeah, Mercury had one person, and then when they doubled it, it's Gemini because the twins.
Aha, yes. There we go, right? Yeah, so after Mercury, NASA introduced Gemini, which was like it was redesigned spacecraft for 2 astronauts. Aha, now I get it, finally. And there were 10 Gemini missions flown from 1964 to 1966 to improve like techniques of spacecraft control, rendezvous, docking, extravehicular activity like spacewalking. And then one Gemini mission spent like a record-breaking 2 weeks in space, time enough for like a future crew to go up to the moon, explore, and return.
Right. So one thing to remember about all of this is that the race was to get a man in space, and the Russians won. So the Russians got Yuri Gagarin into space first, and they were so far ahead. So then by the time that they were doing the Mercury program, they were like, well, once we do get up there, it's not going to be as big of a deal. So then Kennedy and Johnson, because Johnson was the head of NASA as vice president, like they decided, well, we are going to have to reconfigure this. So they started thinking about Gemini specifically as training for what would become Apollo. So like they were already behind the Soviets. And so they had to like if they were going to be doing this stuff and feel like they were already doing things that the Russians were doing, no, we're going to be practicing to get to the moon.
Right.
And which paid off because they got to the moon first.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So it sounds like that's what they're talking about here. And Dyer's response, right? First missionary on Mars, right? That's straight from the book again. Dyer, like he cracks these jokes. And it sometimes like seems in the book that he has this like really deadpan delivery where people can't tell if he's joking or not. And this is one of those, right? Like when he first shows up at this party, like he apologizes for being late and he's like, I couldn't find the right necktie.
That's the thing about priests. Yeah. You have trouble telling, you have trouble catching sarcasm from priests at all because you're not sure if they're allowed. Are you allowed to be sarcastic?
Right. So,
are you allowed to say one thing but mean another thing? Where is that in the Bible?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think we figured out in our last minute, Keenan, it's everywhere in the Bible.
So it sounds like this guy is talking about how luxurious his new missions are compared to those two.
Right.
So it sounds like he's an Apollo astronaut, which would have still been going at the time when this movie is taking place. They would have already gotten to the moon, but continue on. And I think that is borne out by the extended Blatty-verse, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, right. And in the next minute, right, we're gonna have a Reagan come down. She's gonna you're gonna have a really good time up there.
Right. We're all counting on you. Good luck. Yes.
God bless America. No. And also, I believe we have a tie-in to another book which Blatty wrote, The Ninth Configuration. Right. Keenan, you said like after our Xmas episode, like you did a little homework for that and you got some stuff on that, right? Is that supposed to be this character, this astronaut?
Yes, we'll talk about it. We'll tease it for the next episode when we have a little bit more of this astronaut. But yes, so Blatty wrote a book before this, and then he turned it into a movie after this called The Ninth Configuration. And in his mind, this astronaut is the same astronaut in The Ninth Configuration. We don't have a name for him here, and he's played by different actors. But Blatty had designed it that way, and I believe he would still consider them the same. So The Ninth Configuration, in some ways, you could consider it a sequel to The Exorcist or part of this extended universe. Right, even though they're very, very different.
It's so weird to think about that. Like you think about this movie being like so self-contained, so like even more self-contained than like episode 4.
Right.
right? Like, which, by all accounts is like a movie in and of itself. It's like, you don't need anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're talking about Star Wars, folks, right? Like you can just watch that movie and it's like have like a full on complete Star Wars experience. Like, and it's great.
Right.
And I also felt like this about The Exorcist, like just this movie. And then, come to find in the research and everything like that. I mean, I knew before, but like, there's so many like other movies associated with this movie. I mean, this movie itself has 2 versions, right?
Right.
This is the version you've never seen, right?
Yeah, and so he had written this astronaut character before in the late 1960s, and he had tried to make that into a movie and give the script to Friedkin, and that didn't happen. And so, but as far as he was concerned, this was the same guy he had already written a movie about. So he'd already written what happens to this astronaut character after The Exorcist.
Interesting. Oh, and actually, Keenan, I forgot about this. I wanted to talk about this. So we keep on comparing Blatty's book to his screenplay, right? And I think we've made a couple of comments about how like it almost seems like he's copy pasted a couple of things.
A lot of
like,
it, the dialogue certainly, and some of these scene description, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the scene description, which you wouldn't even like kind of get a sense of, except like maybe visually in the movie, right? Like you're not gonna like, ooh, yeah, alien code tapped out by a dead man. Like I appreciate that little clap in the theater, right? Like when you're watching the movie. But so apparently, Blatty came to Friedkin first with an adapted screenplay, and Friedkin didn't like it.
Of The Exorcist?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so Blatty was like, hey, I got a surprise for you. I already wrote the screenplay. And so according to Friedkin in this new Amazon documentary that I was watching, A Leap of Faith, check that out, folks. According to Friedkin, the screenplay, it had like flashbacks and it had like all this stuff that Friedkin didn't like. And so like he goes back to Blatty and he's like, hey, I want to shoot your book. Like give me your book. And so apparently Friedkin takes the book and he just like highlights and circles a whole bunch of stuff. He's like, I want this in the movie. I want this in the movie. I want this in the movie. So maybe we also have kind of Friedkin to thank for like some of these things almost seeming like they're copy pasted.
Oh, that's very
into
interesting.
The screenplay.
Yeah. He's like, I like this. Don't change that. Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, folks, so our minute ends with just the very beginning of an interaction between Burke and his best buddy, Carl. Burke says, tell me. And that's where we got to break off for this minute. Before we go, Keenan, is there anything else we missed?
No, I'm excited to give you a teaser for next episode about all my homework that I give. It's a good week for homework.
Oh, my goodness. I'm excited for that. And I'm also excited for like what does Burke want Carl to tell him? Like,
and what happened to that grandfather? What did that grandfather say?
What happened to that grandfather? So many questions. We like to say that we answer these questions here at the Exorcist Minute, but really we're just giving them more questions. And yes, folks, we now have a listener group to our show. It's on Facebook. It's called Compelling Conversations, an Exorcist Minute listener group. It's a private group, but just, request to join and we'll let you in and then you can be in here with us. And also, if you would like to leave us a message, our email is theexorcistminute@gmail.com, all one word, and we'll read it on the show. If you like the show and you want to help us out, the best thing you can do for a podcast that's just starting out is to leave a little 5-star review, and that'll help the algorithm. That'll help us. That'll help other people find us, and we can keep growing this awesome, this excellent community.
All hail the algorithm.
All hail the algorithm.
All hail the algorithm.
Yeah. That's gonna hit very, very differently in 3023. When the algorithm has erased our facial features and we're just plastic people.
Much more efficient this way. Can't get COVID.
Right. We're going to need a new Shakespeare. He's going to need to invent the personality for these new humans. Yeah. Okay. So, Keenan, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think I am, Lester.
Folks, until next time, the power of the Wilhelm scream compels you.